MacDonald, to be followed by Bill Kidd. Mr Macdonald, please.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer, and I too congratulate Claire Adamson on securing this debate and would echo Mark Ruskell's comments that for a number of years now Ms Adamson has been leading the way in relation to safety and accident prevention in this Parliament, and I hope that continues to be the case. She mentioned in her speech the issue around poisoning, and one area which I noted in the Child Accident Prevention Trust information and growing risk and emerging risk is around the liquid nicotine refills from e-cigarettes, which our hospitals are reporting growing numbers of children accidentally swallowing and ingesting liquid nicotine from e-cigarette refills. So that is an emerging risk which needs to be borne in mind, in individuals and families where those refills are to be found need to think very carefully about safe storage of those. The other issue which Claire Adamson mentioned, she spoke about the issue of the cases that we talk about being the tip of the iceberg, because they are the ones which we see measured in statistics, and that chimes with a report from within the journal The Archives of Disease in Childhood. One of the co-authors was Dr. Jamie Cooper, a consultant in emergency medicine at the Royal Aberdeen Children's Hospital, who said, we only see the tip of the iceberg, we only see it when it is not alleviated. And in that journal article, 3 cases were highlighted from within Aberdeen alone of children choking on after eating whole grapes. Unfortunately, in 2 of those instances, a 5-year-old boy choked while eating grapes at an after-school club and had a heart attack and died. And a 17-month-old boy choked while eating grapes with his family at home. And while the grape was eventually removed by paramedics, the little boy sadly still died. In the 3rd instance, a 2-year-old choked while snacking on grapes in the park, suffered 2 seizures and spent 5 days in intensive care, but thankfully recovered. Now, those are only cases in Aberdeen, and within the report, well, if I could just finish this point, within the report it highlights that grapes are the 3rd most common cause of death in food-related incidents, and my researcher wondered what the other 2 were, so she looked them up, and they are hot dogs and sweets. So I still cut my own children's grapes before feeding them to them, and chances are I probably will until they're teenagers and tell me to stop doing it. I'll take Claire Adamson's intervention.
Claire Adamson.
Thank you very much for taking the intervention. The Cross-Party Group on Accident Prevention and Safety Awareness was delighted to have a presentation through the Mark Scott Leadership Awards from a group of schools in Cumbernauld who had taken inspiration from those very stories and had developed a training programme. They themselves became first aid trained and were then going out and teaching primary schools about the dangers of choking and giving their expertise on to younger groups of children. And I just wondered if the member would agree that that first aid awareness is really important and that people should take up opportunities to learn about it.
Mark MacDonald, make up your time, yes.
Well, I'm very grateful for that, Presiding Officer. Absolutely, and I'll come back to that a little bit later now that I've got that time back to be able to do so. The other issue which was mentioned by Claire Adamson was drowning, and members from the North East who are present in the Chamber will perhaps remember the tragic incident in 2016 where my constituent Julie Walker died while trying to save her 6-year-old son Lucas at Aberdeen Beach, who sadly also died. And that was the incident which led to the formation of the Aberdeen Water Safety Group, bringing together various agencies in the city of Aberdeen to look at how water safety could be promoted, not just at the beach, but also in relation to the 2 rivers in Aberdeen as well, and some of the open water that exists within the city. There's another group which I want to highlight based in my constituency, and that's Absafe, an organisation which does a huge amount of work to improve safety awareness within the city. They have an interactive facility called The Safe in Bridge of Dawn in my constituency, where their team and volunteers deliver engaging, fun and informative sessions that teach children about everyday hazards and how to deal with them, including road, railway, home, fire safety, solvent misuse, antisocial behaviour, cyberbullying and security. They're funded by Aberdeen City Council to ensure that every primary 7 child in the city receives a complimentary day visit, and their lessons follow the curriculum for excellence, ensuring the delivery is age appropriate, supports required learning outcomes and fits the GIRFEC principles. And finally, Presiding Officer, Claire Adamson mentioned first aid, and I absolutely agree that first aid training is important. It was great to see the announcement that all local authorities in Scotland will deliver CPR training in schools, but CPR training will only take you so far in relation to being able to save a life. For example, in a choking incident, wider first aid training is perhaps necessary. I noted the first aid training call from St Andrews First Aid through their petition to the Petitions Committee. I recognise the Government have said this is a matter better dealt with by local authorities on an individual basis. I hope perhaps we might see some leadership from COSLA and local authorities in relation to that, and wider first aid training for children can be made available to ensure that they are equipped not just to spot hazards but also to deal with the situations they may face with their peers.
Thank you.